Hello and welcome everybody to the first ZAGSPOD podcast featuring myself, Sam Lance, and Adam Zagoria, the founder of ZAGSPOD. Today we're basically going to cover some various topics. Adam and I have been able to see multiple college basketball exhibition games leading up to the season. So we're going to go over some of those, what we saw from these different teams. And then we're also going to cover a very busy recruiting weekend coming up here. We have 6 players coming off the board on November 1st and 2nd, all who are looking at some blue bloods and their final list. So we're going to get into that and hopefully have a lot of fun along the way. So let's start with some of these college basketball exhibition games that have been going on leading up to the season, which starts on November 4th. Adam, you recently tripped North Carolina and Duke. What did you learn? What did you see? We'll start here with Duke, and you got to see Cooper Flagg, the projected #1 pick.
Yeah. Hey, Sam. Good to see you. Good to be with you today. Yeah, I had kind of a fun weekend. I went to North Carolina, got to see my daughter, Grace, who goes to Davidson. And then I checked out both North Carolina and Duke had exhibitions on Sunday. And I'll tell you, that Duke team, man, I was really impressed. I mean, just as an overview, I saw Bobby Hurley came in the press conference. He's the Arizona State coach, and he got, his team got their butts kicked by 56 points. And in classic Hurley fashion, he came in and said, "We got our ass kicked. Hats off to that where they are, and oh shit to where we are." So I thought that was pretty much, it was a classic Hurley one-liner, and pretty much summed it up. But yeah, that Duke team, Cooper Flagg in the game I saw was 3 of 9 for 9 points. He did his thing. It wasn't his best game, but they had 6 guys in double figures. Knipple, the 6'7" freshman out of Wisconsin, really impressed Sam there in front of a lot of NBA guys, was 4 of 8 from 3 for 19 points. And then, I think we're going to talk about this all year. Guards are really important in college basketball. And, they have a couple, veterans now, I would call them. And Caleb Foster had 17 in the game. Tyrese Proctor had 10. They got Sion James, the transfer, Darren Harris. So they have a lot of weapons on that team, plus Cooper, plus Kaman Malawak, who's the freshman who's like 7'2", played for South Sudan in the Olympics. So, it's early, but this Duke team, it just has a lot of weapons. And, I think we could see them making a deep run in March. And, look, I've written about it. When you're going out and recruiting the Cooper Flaggs of the world and the, Boozer brothers of the world, Sam, your fans are expecting you to make deep runs. And I think they have the potential for that.
Yeah, absolutely. I really liked Knipple's performance in that game. I was able to catch just a little bit, and he's been lighting it up from 3-point range to start this preseason. I'm curious, how is the reception of having Bobby Hurley back there?
Yeah, it was a pretty cool environment. I mean, I have to say, by the way, 2 or 3 reporters in the press room came up to me and, sang your praise and said, that guy Sam Lance works his butt off, and they love reading your stuff, all the recruiting stuff. So you've made some fans, and, everybody should know Sam worked really hard this summer at Peach Jam and continues to work hard. Yeah, the Hurley thing was cool. I mean, I guess his daughter, whose name is Cameron, graduated 6 years ago, so he was back for that, but he hadn't been back for a game in a long time. They brought him and Coach K and John Shire out in the middle of the court before the game, and they took pictures. And, of course, we all know Bobby won back-to-back titles as a player there in the 90s, and now his brother Danny has won back-to-back titles at UConn as a coach. So it's a, pretty unique family. I think Bobby was a little, I don't know if embarrassed is the right word, but he was certainly upset and displeased with his team's performance. You fly all the way from Arizona to Duke and you get hammered by 56. The one guy he sort of praised was Jaden Quaintance, the freshman who's actually only 17. So he's got to say 2 more years in college. And, he looked like he could kind of hold his own. But as a team, Arizona State just looked overwhelmed.
And
And
how
then
about,
I'm sorry, keep going.
yeah, just how about North Carolina? You also saw them. I know Bill Self said that, Arkansas might have the best trio of guards in the country, but North Carolina's got a pretty good trio there as well.
Yeah. I mean, I have to say I think it was my first time in the Dean Dome, or at least it's been a long time. It was an exhibition game. I understand they're looking at building a smaller arena there at North Carolina because this place holds like 21,000 and it's a little cavernous. And for an exhibition game, they had to ask the fans, in the upper seats to move down to the lower seats to fill it out. So it doesn't have the same intense, intimate environment that Cameron has. It was also a blowout. But yeah, in terms of guards, between, RJ Davis and Elliot Cadeau, who I think is on the preseason Bob Cousy watch list. You got my guy Ian Jackson from up here in New York City, at our Savior American. He had a big dunk in the game. And then Seth Trimble, that's a quartet of guards right there, Sam, that,
Yeah.
one of them's a freshman, one's a sophomore, but it's a lot of talent. And, when we get to March and March Madness, it's all about guards.
Yeah.
So I think, I know you're going to talk about Arkansas, but I think Carolina and Duke, both have a set of, 4 or 5 guards that are really experienced. Now I know you went to the exhibition you traveled to Arkansas and you saw Arkansas, Kansas. I'm kind of curious, Sam, tell us a little bit about the vibe. Here you had John Calipari, a Hall of Famer, guy was at Kentucky for a long time, and he shocked, pretty much the basketball world when he picked up and went to an SEC rival. But
Yeah.
what's the feel? What are the expectations there?
Yeah, it's actually kind of funny, Zags. My first ever college basketball game that I covered was Calipari versus Bill Self, but it was in Indianapolis during COVID. No fans
Yeah.
inside of the Pacer Stadium, no fans, and you got to kind of just hear Self and Calipari talk. It was a lot different going to Arkansas because those fans are pretty wild. And I remember I got there at probably 3 and the game's at 8. So I got to Fayetteville at 3 and I just started walking around. I headed to Bud Walton, and at 3 p.m., there was already a number of students lined up like as far as the eye could see to get into the building. So the energy that Cal has brought there is pretty palpable. It's that building was rocking from the tip off. And then whenever Cal walked out for the first time, that was one of the loudest roars that I have heard in a long time from a crowd. But yeah, I mean,
It's still a little jarring to see him in Arkansas red as opposed to Kentucky blue. It's kind of like seeing Kadari Richmond in St. John's red instead of Seton Hall blue. But I mean, it would be some big story, wouldn't it, if Cal gets this Arkansas team? I know we're looking ahead to March Madness, but if they have a great season and then Arkansas makes a run after his Kentucky team lost in the first round, right?
yeah, it would be something to see. And I think that Arkansas has the team this year that can do it. I wrote a story on Zag's blog kind of about Bill Self talking about how this is the best trio of guards that he thinks Kansas will play. And he also said that this is one of Calipari's most talented teams. Even some of the elite teams that he's had at Kentucky, he believes this Arkansas squad is right up there. And I'll have to agree. I know that Kansas was without Hunter Dickinson, an All-American. They were without Rylan Griffin, somebody who was a starter for a Final Four team last year, and then Shaquille Moore, who's probably Kansas's best defender. They were without those 3 people, but Arkansas put it on them. And those 3 guards that Arkansas has, Boogie Fland, I think, is a lot more ahead of what people thought.
Archbishop Stepanak, White Plains, New York, baby.
Yes, sir. I mean, Boogie Fland might be he might be a lottery pick if he plays like that the rest of the year. And then you got DJ Wagner back for his sophomore year. I believe he
Yeah,
had
how did
22
he look
points.
to you?
He looked he looked really good. He was shooting the 3 ball confidently from NBA range. He's getting downhill pretty easily, and like he's getting guarded by DeJuan Harris in this game. He kind of flip-flopped between Boogie Fland and DJ Wagner, but that's no joke of a defender. That's a Big 12 defensive player of the year about 2 seasons ago. So
Now, Sam, let me ask you, is he using Boogie as the primary facilitator ball handler? How much did
yep.
DJ play the point?
Yeah, Boogie was your PG. DJ played a lot more off the ball. He might have brought it up a couple of times, but they're running things through Boogie Fland, and he looks incredible. I mean, he was hitting step back shots. He was getting to the paint like nobody's business. Like it was easy for him. Those guards are no joke, and I think those guards can take Kentucky pretty far. But you talk about those two.
Arkansas, pretty
Oh
far.
yeah, sorry, Arkansas, pretty
Yeah.
far. And you can talk about those two, and you still have Jonell Davis, who is incredible at FAU, and then you got Brazil, who is a really good four-man. Big Z made a ton of threes in that game. I think he made four 3-point shots, and that's just kind of that top five. And then you're talking about having to do Thiero, who was very productive at Kentucky last season, then in 2 5 stars and Billy Richmond and Carter Knox coming off the bench. So that's a talented team that Calipari has, and I think they showed it against Kansas. And we'll find out a lot about Arkansas here coming up. They have some pretty big games, but I think they're a little underrated in the preseason. I mean, 25 in KenPom, 16 in the AP poll. I think it's a top 10 team as far as talent goes, this Arkansas squad.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Cal's got a freshman point guard in Boogie. He's, obviously not afraid to play freshmen, but I think with all these teams, especially like the Dukes and Kentuckys of the world, they're going to, sorry, Arkansas, we keep saying Kentucky. They're going to keep recruiting, elite one and done freshmen. I asked John Shire about it last year, and he said, we're going to recruit, he's talking about guys like Cooper Flagg and Cameron Boozer, all day long. We're not going to stop recruiting those guys, and Cal is going to also, but you have to balance out your roster with older players and transfers. And it's really a question of, finding that balance where you got some, Duke's got Mason Gillis that played at Purdue. He played in the championship game. Arkansas's got John L. Davis, who, has played deep in the tournament. So you need to have these guys complementing the younger guys. And, that's sort of the new wave of college basketball.
Yeah, and Arkansas is also without Jonas Adu, the big man transfer from Tennessee, who I think will be a big impact guy for them as well. Kind of one of those veteran leaders that you were talking about. Let's talk about more of a younger team. Adam, I believe you were at Rutgers St. John's a week or so ago. Dylan Harper, Ace Bailey. I watched that game on TV, but what did you just kind of see being there in person?
Yeah, I mean, look, first of all, I've lived here in New York and New York area my whole life, and Rutgers has, let's face it, they've been a sort of a laughing stock joke of college basketball for a long time. And then Steve Pikiell comes in and he's done a terrific job changing the culture of the program. He got them to, multiple NCAA tournaments. And now they've got two guys projected top 5 NBA draft picks. And, there's a lot of hype and excitement around this Rutgers program. The governor of New Jersey was at the game, Governor Murphy. And, there a lot of NBA scouts are going to be at all their games, just like at Duke. And, again, they're only going to have one season, 6 months probably with Dylan and Ace. And there's a lot of expectations about, not only getting back to the Final Four, but making a deep run. Those two guys, very impressive. They combined for 45 points in the game. Now Rutgers was ahead of St. John's most of the game, and then St. John's ends up winning it. Obviously, St. John's has a Hall of Fame coach in Rick Pitino.
Yep.
Ace Bailey is really fun to watch. I've talked to a bunch of NBA guys who say, it's not a lock that Cooper Flagg is going to be the number 1 pick. Some of them think Ace has a, better pro potential. I mean, this is a guy who's 6'9", 6'10", long arms, wiry, looks like a future NBA player. He force a few shots? Yeah, but he made, I think, 4 threes. He hit a couple beautiful pull-up 15-foot jumpers. He had a dunk off an inbounds. 6'10" guys who can shoot the three. That's what the modern NBA is all about. And then Dylan Harper, Rick Pitino compared him to Walt Clyde Frazier. I mean, I know Rick is prone to exaggeration sometimes because he likes to speak to the media, but Dylan just really poised and mature for his age. And then they've got some older pieces in there. That the starting center is a little raw, but that team I think will go as far as those freshmen take them, and how well they gel together. So it's exciting for New Jersey and the Rutgers fans. St. John's also has an excellent team. The big story up here in New York and New Jersey was Kadari Richmond,
Yep.
probably the number one transfer in the portal, all Big East preseason first team player, flips from Seton Hall to St. John's. This guy has now played for Syracuse, Seton Hall, and St. John's. Nobody's ever done that in the history of mankind. And, Rick's already calling him the best guard in college basketball. They have your former Kansas guy, Zuby
Yep.
Ejiofor, who I think went for 25 in that game. Very impressive offensive player. He's got a lot of nice pieces there. Devon Smith, the Utah transfer. Simeon Wilchers, a sophomore from up here in New Jersey, who Rick has been raving about. So, I think Rick, there's a real passion there. Obviously, he's in the Big East. He's competing with Danny and UConn. Danny's kind of the big dog and in the Big East now, and Rick wants to show that his team can compete for the Big East and get in the tournament. So, it's a lot of excitement up here with both those teams.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to ask you this, Zagoria, because Dan Hurley, said during the Big East Media Day, talking about how, the Big East is the best conference in the land because they have the titles to prove it. Do you think the Big East is the best conference in basketball?
I mean, I'll say this. I love my guys, Mike DeCourcy and Andy Katz, and the guys who cover the Big Ten, who are constantly telling me all season how great the Big Ten is, and all the coaches are telling us how great the Big Ten is. Tom Izzo, Matt Painter, obviously Hall of Fame coaches, and there's obviously a lot of great teams in that league. But let's get freaking serious here, people. This league hasn't won a championship since Bill Clinton was in the White House a quarter of a century ago.
I don't think I was born the last
Yeah,
time the
yeah.
Big Ten.
Now they got a team Purdue to the championship game. That's great. They got beat by 15 points by Connecticut. Illinois lost by, I forget, 20, 25, 30. They got smoked by UConn. So, Danny put out some comments. He didn't call the Big Ten out by name, but he basically said, you can't lay claim to being the best conference in the country without any hardware. The Big East has won 4 of the last 8, including the last 2. Now, obviously, the bottom of the Big East, in recent years is pretty weak. DePaul, Georgetown, whoever else you want to put in there. Whereas, obviously the Big 12 is pretty stacked top to bottom. So I think, between the Big 12 and the Big East, those are the 2 best conferences. Probably top to bottom, the Big 12 is deeper and stronger. But in terms of like bringing home the hardware, man, you cannot argue with what the Big East has done here.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd go either Big 12 or Big East. I think the Big 12 may be a little stronger at top this year with 5 teams in the top 10, but we'll see how it plays out in March. We'll see how it plays out in March.
Yeah, and you're adding Houston whenever that was a couple years ago. Great addition basketball wise. Kansas is always going to be up there. A lot of great teams in the Big 12.
Absolutely. Well, now we're going to go and shift gears and talk some recruiting. Several top prospects come off the board this weekend. We got Caden Mingo, Amari Evans, and Darren Peterson coming off the board on November 1st. And then Shelton Henderson, Caden Lewis, and Isaiah Dennis will follow on the 2nd. We're just going to kind of go over some of these guys real quick, where they're at in their recruitment. what's going on. And we wanted to start with Caden Mingo. First, Mingo is down to a few schools here and is nearing his decision. And he has a top four of Georgia, Penn State, Virginia Tech, and Wake Forest. I think the two schools to really look at here are Penn State and Georgia. Both schools make a lot of sense when you look at the commitments. And Penn State has been on Mingo for quite some time, over a couple of years now. Georgia, they got three commits: Jacob Wilkins, Kareem Stagg, and Jackson McVeigh. All those guys are kind of your bigs and wings. So adding Mingo would kind of give them that, lead guard for their class. And then Penn State, kind of the same deal there. They have wing Mason Blackwood and a big man and Justin Hauser. So Mingo would also fill in the guard spot for their class. So I'm thinking either Penn State or Georgia for Caden Mingo.
Yeah, my prediction is Penn State there, Sam. My understanding is they're in a good position. I know Wake Forest really wanted him. Steve Forbes went hard there. Georgia was involved, but I am predicting Penn State on Caden.
Another guard coming off the board on November 1st is Amari Evans. Amari is down to three of Tennessee, Pitt, and Xavier. I will say Xavier seems a little bit unlikely at the moment with Jaden Forsythe and Nick Lewis. Those are both 1 to 2 guards who have committed to Xavier. So, and Amari Evans is kind of that 1-2 guard. He plays alongside Malik Thomas in Overtime Elite and also for the NH Lightning this summer. He was kind of your do-it-all 2 guard. He can shoot the three, he can drive, he can get downhill, and he can guard. Honestly, I think Tennessee is the perfect system fit for him. Just the way that they guard, the way that they play, and they only have one commit, and that's a big man in Dwayne Brown. So he would fit really well there with that class. And then Evans is from Pittsburgh, and Pitt is right there with him in this final list. And Pitt only has a shooting guard / small forward and Amari Weatherspoon committed there. So I could see either Tennessee or Pitt leading up to this decision.
Yeah, I'm going to defer to you on that one. I'm not as tuned in on that situation as you are, so we'll have to wait and see on that and kind of see how that pans out.
And then another top 5 prospect coming off the board. I believe that'll be one of the last, top prospects left on the board is Darren Peterson. And then Nate Ament is kind of that other guy in the top 5, along with AJ Dybansta, who's still on the board. But Darren Peterson, the signs have been pointing to Kansas for quite some time now. He plays for Prolific Prep, Adidas-sponsored school, and also has that Adidas NIL deal. Many crystal balls have been put out there for Darren Peterson to Kansas. I would think they're pretty confident in landing him, and that would be Kansas's highest-ranked recruit since Josh Jackson back in 2016. So Bill Self likely going to add one of his top prospects in recent memory. I'm excited to see what that will look like at Kansas if it happens. But Darren Peterson, all signs pointing to the Kansas Jayhawks right now.
Yeah, I mean, Bill Self's obviously had great success with a lot of similar guards over the years. He's got a bunch of guards in the NBA now, and I think Darren Peterson kind of tracks on that NBA prospect list. I know some NBA scouts are really high on him, so that would be a terrific addition for Bill Self, and I'm sure Darren and his family, if he goes to Kansas, are thinking Bill Self's got the track record to get him ready for the next level.
Yeah, absolutely. And 3 more players we got to go through here, all committing on November 2nd. The first one is Shelton Henderson, down to a top 3 of Duke, Louisville, and Texas. Louisville and Texas are actually 2 teams that don't have any 2025 commits yet. I believe Louisville is the only team in the ACC without a 2025 commit, and Texas is the only school in the SEC without a 2025 commit. But all signs right now are pointing to Duke for Shelton Henderson. I've seen many crystal balls cast from various networks on Shelton Henderson to Duke, and he'd be joining quite the class there. Of course, you have the Boozer twins, and then Duke picked up Nicholas Kaminia this past week. So adding Shelton to that, you're looking at a point guard, Shelton, who's a two guard, more of a small forward, and then you got two foremen and Kaminia and Boozer to kind of round out that class, which is
Yeah.
looking to be another top three class.
Yeah. I mean, when I was down at Duke this weekend, Sam, I was told by some people, around the program that they feel really good about Shelton Henderson going there. And yeah, just be another elite recruiting class there. Um, they because they're bringing in the boozers, I think they sort of pulled out on some other similar players at those positions, including point guards. I think it's kind of interesting. Like obviously Cam Boozer is a one and done, and he's could be the first or second pick in 2026, right, along with AJ. But I think the family there, from what I understand, had to be kind of reassured that Caden would play and would have a role and would be able to have a serious role at Duke. So with him coming there, they kind of backed out on some other point guards. But like you just said, they're bringing in players at every position. If they get Shelton, obviously they're gonna lose Cooper and maybe Kaman and maybe Knipple. So they're gonna have a revolving door of elite freshmen coming in there.
Yeah, Duke just reloads, and this is actually going to be if Shire would get Henderson, I would guess I would put him in the top one or two classes. And Shire has had the number one or the number two class in every single season so far at Duke, which I think is pretty impressive. Moving on to a Caden Lewis, who is one of those guards that we are kind of referencing. He's gotten some crystal balls to Kentucky as well. UConn is done recruiting per Adam Zagoria in this 2025 class after picking up Furphy. And Duke, as we mentioned, has their lead guard in Caden Boozer, and Caden Lewis is definitely kind of more of that lead guard. So all signs are pointing to Kentucky for a Caden Lewis. And I think the thing to note here is kind of Caleb Wilson's pitch to a Caden Lewis. He was kind of courting him to the Kentucky Wildcats a couple weeks ago, and it now looks like a Caden Lewis might commit before Caleb Wilson. So will the tables kind of turn there, and will it be a Caden now, asking Caleb to join him there in Kentucky?
Yeah, sorry, I had my dog growling there a little bit. I had to get my dog Daphne out of here for a minute. Yeah, I think Kentucky is in a good position with a Caden, and then he would, if he goes there, he would join Jasper Johnson and Malachi Moreno, right, the big kid.
Yep.
And then obviously they want to get Caleb Wilson to recruit that to finish that recruiting class.
Yeah, that would be a pretty insane four. Jasper, Caden Wilson, and Moreno. And I just like the Jasper Caden pairing. They're both lefties. They're both really crafty scoring guards. I think that would be pretty fun to watch at Kentucky, see what Mark Pope can do with those guys with his offense. We got one more player coming off the board this weekend, and that's going to be Isaiah Dennis. This is one that honestly has been a lot quieter recruitment-wise than some of these other guys. He doesn't have an official top list, I don't believe. He had the top 10, but he's only taken visits to Tennessee, Wake Forest, North Carolina, Miami, Ohio State, and Pittsburgh. So I would expect Dennis to be choosing from those schools. Kind of the ones that I'm hearing are out in front are North Carolina, Ohio State, and Wake Forest. North Carolina only has one commit right now, and that's Derek Dixon, who is a point guard, and Dennis is kind of that point guard combo guard, but I think the two could pair well together, and Dennis has played alongside other great guards at the AAU level, and so has Derek Dixon. He played with Nick Lewis with Team Takeover, so that could be a pretty good pairing there, and Dennis is a North Carolina native. The other school to look out for is Ohio State. They have a couple commits, and Amari Bynum, who's a four-man, and then Dorian Jones is kind of your shooting guard, small forward sort of deal. So Isaiah Dennis would fit well in that class too. And then Wake, they have just Isaac Carr, who's kind of a shooting guard sort of deal. So really, I could see Dennis going to any of those schools. And everybody kind of seems to be in the dark on this one, though, as we get to this commitment date.
Yeah, I guess it's good to have at least a couple recruits that keep people guessing, because a lot of these, either get leaked out or, people make predictions and get information. So it's definitely going to be a fun weekend here with all these guys coming off the board. And, it's exciting for them and their fan bases and the programs. And hopefully my Yankees are still playing this weekend, Sam.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know if you wanted to talk about, you broke the news about Jacob Furphy yesterday going to UConn to round out that recruiting class. If you wanted to kind of talk about him a little bit.
Yeah, I reported earlier in the week that UConn was kind of done recruiting American players. Obviously, that left the door open for international players. Jacob Furphy is a 6'5" lefty wing. I'm told they see him as a small forward wing who can complement Darius Adams and Braylon Mullins, who they already landed in this class, along with the big kid Eric Ribe. So, again, they're bringing in players at multiple positions. I've heard comparisons between him and Joe Ingles. They're both Australian, both left-handed.
I've heard some Baylor Shireman as well.
Yeah,
Baylor
yeah.
Shireman at Creighton.
Yeah, I think he's a little maybe out of shape, and they kind of have to get his body in shape. But he's a tough, competitive kid, can shoot it. Won a gold medal with the Australia U18 team. Could shoot the three. He's from Tasmania. He played for NBA Global Academy, and it's just a great. It shows that the UConn brand now reaches internationally and really completes their class. And Danny told me at Big East Media Day they're looking to bring in some, elite early entry type of talent. They've lost 7 guys to the NBA in the last 2 years. They're probably going to lose an Alex Caravan and maybe some of their sophomore guards this year. So you got to, just like Kentucky, Duke, these other schools, you got to keep recycling and building your team.
Yeah, absolutely. Another big get for UConn, and that's all we have today. Thank you guys for kind of sticking with us here. If you want updates on all of the remaining uncommitted players, or you just kind of want to read up on the ones that have committed, kind of tracking what these recruiting classes are shaping up like, be sure to check out ZAGSPOD.com. We have 3 trackers up and running right now. We have Intel, which tracks the top 100 players in the country. We have an official visit tracker, and then we have a committed players tracker, which I believe has every single player who has committed in the class of 2025, no matter what school it is, at the Division I level. We have it tracked, and I will also be working on a 2026 class tracker here soon, so be on the lookout for that. We're putting in work over at zagsblog.com.
All right, Sam, great job. Good seeing everybody, and we'll talk to you soon.